What happens when two of country music's biggest stars, who once shared a coaching panel and countless laughs, find themselves in a confrontation so intense that one of them walks off set? Before we get into what went down, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling us whose side you're on in this whole situation. The tension in the studio was palpable from the moment Blake Shelton walked onto the set of the Kelly Clarkson Show. Kelly greeted him with her usual warmth, that big smile plastered across her face, but anyone paying attention could see something was different. Blake's handshake was brief, his smile tight, and as he settled into the guest chair, there was an edge to his demeanor that hadn't been there in their previous interactions. Kelly started with the easy stuff, asking about his latest music, his life in Oklahoma, and the usual banter that audiences had come to expect from these two. Blake played along, offering short answers and polite laughs, but the energy felt off. Kelly, ever the professional, pushed forward, trying to inject some of that old voice chemistry into the conversation. Then she brought up the voice. That's when things shifted. Kelly leaned forward, her tone playful but with a hint of something else underneath. She said, "You know, Blake, I've been thinking a lot about our time on The Voice together, and I have to ask, did you ever actually think I was a good coach? Or were you just being nice because we had to work together?" Blake's eyes narrowed slightly. He let out a short laugh, but it wasn't the warm, genuine kind. He said, "Well, Kelly, I think you were entertaining. I'll give you that. You brought energy to the show. Whether that translated to actual coaching ability, that's a different conversation." The audience let out a collective gasp, a mixture of nervous laughter and genuine surprise. Kelly's smile faltered for just a moment before she recovered, but you could see the shift in her expression. She wasn't expecting that response, or at least not delivered with that level of bite. Kelly shot back, saying, "Entertaining? That's interesting coming from someone whose entire coaching strategy seemed to revolve around playing guitar and making jokes." "I actually worked with my artists, Blake. I helped them grow. I didn't just rely on my charm to get me through." Blake sat up straighter in his chair. He said, "You know what, Kelly? I won that show more times than you did. The numbers speak for themselves. My artists actually listened to what I had to say because I've been in this industry long enough to know what works and what doesn't." Kelly's jaw tightened. She said, "Oh, so now we're counting wins? That's what this is about? Blake, you had a head start on me by years." And let's be honest, some of those wins had more to do with the talent you inherited than any brilliant coaching moves you made. The atmosphere in the studio had completely changed. What started as a light-hearted interview had transformed into something much more raw and real. The audience was silent now, watching this unfold like a tennis match, heads turning back and forth between the two stars. Blake leaned back, crossing his arms. He said, "Inherited talent? That's rich coming from someone who basically tried to clone herself with every artist she picked. You didn't coach them, Kelly. You just wanted them to sing like you. That's not coaching, that's ego." Kelly's face flushed. She said, "Excuse me? You want to talk about ego? You literally made every moment on that show about you. Every joke, every comment, every time the camera was on, Blake Shelton had to be the center of attention. Some of us were actually there to help these artists launch their careers, not boost our own brand." Blake uncrossed his arms and leaned forward, his voice dropping lower but gaining intensity. He said, "Is that what you tell yourself? That you were some selfless mentor up there? Kelly, you were just as competitive as the rest of us, maybe more so. You just hid it behind that bubbly personality and those constant references to your own success." Kelly's eyes flashed. She said, "At least I was honest about caring about the artists. You treated it like a game show, Blake. It was all strategy and alliances and playing to the cameras. Those were real people up there with real dreams, and you turned it into your personal playground." The tension was now impossible to ignore. Production staff members were glancing at each other nervously, unsure whether to intervene or let this play out. Kelly's band members shifted uncomfortably in their positions, and the audience seemed frozen. unsure whether this was part of some elaborate bit or genuinely happening in real time. Blake's voice took on a harder edge. He said, "You want to talk about treating people, right? Let's talk about how you left The Voice. Just walked away without much of a goodbye to anyone. No heads up, no real explanation. You got a better offer, and you were gone. So, don't sit here and lecture me about commitment and caring about people." Kelly's composure was cracking now. She said, "I left because I wanted to do my own thing, Blake. I wanted to build something that was mine, not just be part of someone else's show. And you know what? I did it. This show, my success, that's all me. I didn't need The Voice to validate my career because I already had one before I got there." Blake shook his head slowly. He said, "There it is. That's what this has always been about with you. You always needed everyone to know that you didn't need The Voice, that you were above it somehow. But the truth is, Kelly, you loved every minute of it until you didn't, and now you want to rewrite history and pretend you were too good for it." Kelly stood up from her chair, something hosts rarely do in the middle of an interview. She said, "I'm not rewriting anything. I'm telling the truth. And the truth is that working with you wasn't always the joy that everyone thinks it was. You could be difficult, you could be dismissive, and yes, you made everything about you. I bit my tongue for years because we had to maintain this image of being friends. But since you want to come on my show and question my abilities, let's be real about what our relationship actually was." Blake remained seated, but his body language had become completely closed off. He said, "So now we're airing everything out? Fine. You want real? Here's real. Working with you was exhausting, Kelly. Everything had to be a production. Every emotion had to be big. Every moment had to be about how much you cared or how invested you were. It was exhausting to watch, and I can't imagine what it was like for the artists dealing with that level of intensity all the time." Kelly's voice rose slightly. She said, "Intensity? I brought passion, Blake. I brought genuine emotion and investment. I'm sorry that your laid-back, too cool to care attitude made that look like too much. Maybe if you had shown half the emotion I did, your artists would have felt more supported." Blake finally stood up, matching Kelly's position. He said, "My artists knew exactly where they stood with me. I didn't have to put on a show to prove I cared. I gave them honest feedback, real guidance, and the benefit of my experience. I didn't need to cry every time someone sang a ballad to show I was invested." The two stars were now standing, facing each other, the coffee table between them feeling like a battle line. Kelly said, "You know what, Blake? I think we're done here. This clearly isn't working." Blake let out a bitter laugh. He said, "Now that's something we can finally agree on. Asterisk, asterisk. Ready for section 2? Asterisk, asterisk." Kelly gestured toward the chairs, her voice taking on a forced calmness. She said, "Sit down, Blake. We can get through this like adults. We've got a show to finish." Blake remained standing, his jaw set. He said, "Maybe I don't want to finish it. Maybe I'm tired of pretending everything is fine when it's clearly not." Kelly's eyes widened. She said, "You're seriously going to walk out? On my show? In front of all these people? That's your solution?" Blake said, "My solution is to stop participating in whatever this is. You invited me here, Kelly. I came as a courtesy to support you and your show. And within 10 minutes, you're taking shots at my coaching, my character, everything. What exactly did you expect me to do?" Kelly's voice sharpened. She said, "I expected you to have a conversation, a real one, not the sanitized, media-trained version we always do. We've known each other for years, Blake. Don't you think it's time we were honest?" Blake spread his hands out. He said, "Honest? You want honest? Honestly, Kelly, I think you've changed. Success has changed you. This show, your career blowing up even more, it's made you forget where you came from and who helped you along the way." Kelly's face showed genuine hurt for a moment. She said, "Helped me? Blake, I won American Idol when I was 20. I had a career before I ever met you. I had hits. I had awards. I had everything before the voice was even a concept. So please, tell me more about who helped me along the way. Blake's tone turned colder. He said, I'm not talking about your career, Kelly. I'm talking about you as a person. There was a time when you were fun, when you didn't take everything so seriously. Now everything is a statement. Everything is a moment. You've become exactly what you used to make fun of. Kelly crossed her arms tightly. She said, What I used to make fun of? You mean successful? You mean someone who built their own empire? If that's what you think I've become, then I'll wear that as a badge of honor. At least I'm not coasting on the same shtick I've been doing for 20 years. The audience shifted uncomfortably. This had gone far beyond entertainment value and into genuinely painful territory. Blake rubbed his face with his hand, a gesture of frustration and exhaustion. He said, There it is again. Every conversation with you somehow ends up being about how successful you are, how hard you've worked, how you've built this empire. We get it, Kelly. You're successful. But success doesn't give you the right to tear down everyone else to make yourself feel better. Kelly's voice cracked slightly. She said, I'm not tearing anyone down. I'm defending myself against someone who came on my show and insulted my coaching abilities. You started this, Blake. You could have just answered the question like a normal guest. But no, you had to take a dig. You had to make it clear that you never really respected what I did on The Voice. Blake moved closer to the edge of the platform, his body language suggesting he was preparing to leave. He said, You know what? Maybe I didn't respect it. Not all of it. Because some of it felt fake, Kelly. Some of it felt like you were performing even when the cameras were off. And I'm not the only one who felt that way. Ask anyone who worked on that show. Kelly's face went pale, then flushed red. She said, Fake? You're calling me fake? That's unbelievable coming from you. Mr. Country Charm, Mr. Aw, shucks, I'm just a simple guy from Oklahoma. That's not a persona. That's not carefully crafted. At least I'm genuinely myself, emotions and all. Blake turned back to face her fully. He said, The difference is I don't pretend to be something I'm not. I don't act like I'm everyone's best friend and then talk about them differently when they're not around. I don't smile in people's faces and then question their abilities on national television. Kelly's hands were shaking now. She said, I have never talked about you behind your back, Blake. Never. Everything I've said to you today, I've thought for a long time, but I kept it to myself because I thought we were friends. I thought we had respect for each other. Clearly, I was wrong. Blake said, Respect goes both ways, Kelly. And you lost my respect when you started treating everyone around you like they were there to serve your vision, your brand, your image. The Kelly Clarkson Show isn't a talk show. It's a monument to Kelly Clarkson. Every segment, every interview, every song, it all comes back to you. Kelly threw her hands up. She said, It's my show, Blake. My name is on it. What did you expect? And you know what? At least I'm not afraid to be vulnerable, to show emotion, to let people see who I really am. You hide behind jokes and that good old boy routine because you're terrified of being real. Blake's voice rose for the first time. He said, I'm terrified? That's rich. You're the one who can't handle any criticism without turning it into a therapy session. You're the one who needs constant validation from everyone around you. I came here today thinking we could have a nice conversation, promote some music, laugh about old times. But you couldn't help yourself. You had to dig, had to push, had to make this into something it didn't need to be. Kelly's eyes were bright with unshed tears, but her voice remained strong. She said, I pushed because I wanted the truth, Blake. I wanted to know if our friendship meant anything, or if it was all just for show. And now I know. It was for show. All of it. Every laugh, every inside joke, every moment we shared, it was just two people playing their parts. Blake was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice was lower but no less intense. He said, You want to know the truth? Fine. Here's the truth. I did consider you a friend, Kelly. Past tense. But friends don't ambush each other on their talk shows. Friends don't use their platform to settle scores or make themselves look better at someone else's expense. Whatever we had, you destroyed it today. Kelly's voice broke slightly. She said, I destroyed it? Blake, you're the one who came in here with an attitude. You're the one who couldn't just be gracious and supportive. You're the one who decided to turn a simple question into an attack on my entire coaching philosophy. Don't put this all on me. Blake started moving toward the steps that led off the platform. He said, I'm not putting it all on you, Kelly. I'm putting my part on me, too. My part is thinking we were close enough that I could be honest without it turning into World War III. My part is not realizing that you've surrounded yourself with so many yes people that you can't handle anyone disagreeing with you anymore. Kelly followed him a few steps. She said, Where are you going? We're not finished here. Blake turned, 1 foot already on the step. He said, Yes, we are. I'm done, Kelly. I'm done with this conversation. I'm done with this interview, and honestly, I'm done with whatever this friendship was supposed to be. You want someone to come on your show and worship at the altar of Kelly Clarkson? Get one of your fans. Don't waste my time. Kelly's professionalism kicked in for a moment. She said, Blake, please, we have an audience here. We have cameras rolling. Can we just take a breath and figure this out? Blake shook his head. He said, Figure what out? How to pretend everything is okay when it's not? How to smile and laugh and act like we're best buddies for the cameras? I've been doing that for years, Kelly. I'm tired. I'm tired of fake. I'm tired of pretending. And I'm tired of this entire situation. Kelly's voice turned pleading. She said, This isn't fake, Blake. This, right here, this conversation, this is the most real we've been with each other in years. Doesn't that mean something? Doesn't that matter? Blake paused on the step. He said, You know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe this is the most real we've ever been. And look where it got us. Maybe some relationships are better left at surface level. Maybe digging deeper only reveals that there was nothing there to begin with. Kelly wiped at her eyes quickly. She said, There was something there, Blake. I know there was. We laughed together. We supported each other. We celebrated each other's wins. That wasn't nothing. Blake's expression softened slightly, but only slightly. He said, Maybe it wasn't nothing, but it wasn't enough either. Not enough to survive honesty, apparently. Not enough to get through one difficult conversation without everything falling apart. Kelly took a step closer. She said, So that's it? One fight and you're just done? You're going to throw away years of friendship over one argument? Blake said, This isn't one argument, Kelly, and you know it. This is years of things left unsaid, resentments building up, differences that we papered over because it was easier than dealing with them. Today just ripped off the Band-Aid. And what's underneath isn't pretty. The studio was so quiet, you could hear the hum of the cameras, the shuffle of feet from crew members who didn't know whether to keep filming or stop. Kelly's band sat frozen, unsure of their role in this unfolding drama. Kelly's voice was barely above a whisper now. She said, I don't want it to end like this, Blake. Blake looked at her for a long moment. He said, Neither did I, Kelly. But sometimes we don't get to choose how things end. Kelly stood there, her hand slightly outstretched as if she might physically stop him from leaving. She said, Blake, please just sit down. We can work through this. We've worked through harder things before. Blake let out a hollow laugh. He said, Have we, though? Have we actually worked through anything? Or did we just ignore problems until they went away? Because I'm starting to think it was always the latter. Kelly dropped her hand. She said, So what do you want from me? An apology? Fine. I'm sorry I asked the question. I'm sorry I pushed. I'm sorry this whole thing spiraled. Is that what you need to hear? Blake shook his head slowly. He said, That's the thing, Kelly. I don't need an apology. What I need is for you to understand that not everyone sees the world the way you do. Not everyone thinks you're perfect. And when someone tells you that, Your first instinct shouldn't be to attack them or make them feel small for having a different perspective. Kelly's frustration bubbled back up. She said, I never said I was perfect, Blake. I've never claimed that. But I do work hard, and I am proud of what I've accomplished, and I'm not going to apologize for that. If that makes me difficult in your eyes, then so be it. Blake climbed back up one step, not to return to his seat, but to make his point more directly. He said, it's not about being proud of your accomplishments. It's about how you treat people in the process. It's about whether you lift others up or make them feel like they're just supporting players in your story. And Kelly, if I'm being completely honest, you've made a lot of people feel like supporting players. Kelly's face showed a flash of pain. She said, Who? Who have I made feel that way? Give me names, Blake. Give me specifics instead of these vague accusations. Blake said, I'm not going to throw other people under the bus to prove my point, but I will tell you this. The crew on The Voice noticed. The other coaches noticed. Everyone was just too polite or too professional to say anything, but they noticed when you needed everything to be about your moment, your artist, your journey. Kelly's voice turned defensive. She said, I was doing my job. I was coaching my team. That's what we were there for. If I was intense or focused or demanding, it's because I wanted to win. I wanted my artists to succeed. I make no apologies for that then, and I won't now. Blake said, there's a difference between being competitive and being unable to share the spotlight, and you cross that line more times than you probably realize. Kelly walked back to her chair and sat down heavily. She said, You know what, Blake? Maybe I did. Maybe I was too intense. Maybe I cared too much. But I'd rather be guilty of caring too much than not caring enough. Blake's expression hardened again. He said, And there it is. Another shot. You just can't help yourself, can you? Kelly looked up at him. She said, I wasn't talking about you specifically, Blake. I was making a general statement. Blake said, Don't insult my intelligence, Kelly. Every word out of your mouth today has been calculated to make you look better and make me look worse. Kelly stood back up, her energy shifting from hurt to anger. She said, You want to talk about who I've become? Let's talk about who you've become. You've turned into this bitter, cynical person who can't stand to see anyone else succeed. You used to be funny and supportive. Now you're just resentful. Blake's face flushed. He said, Resentful? Of what? Exactly. My career is fine. My life is fine. What I am is tired. Tired of the game. Tired of the politics. Tired of people like you who mistake confidence for character. Kelly moved closer to him. She said, People like me? What does that even mean? Successful women? Strong women? Women who don't back down? Blake's eyes flashed. He said, Don't you dare make this about gender. This has nothing to do with you being a woman and everything to do with you being someone who can't take criticism without making yourself into a victim. Kelly's voice rose sharply. She said, I'm not playing any card, Blake. I'm calling out what I see. You never had these problems with male coaches. But with me, suddenly everything I did was too much, too emotional, too intense. Blake threw his hands up. He said, I questioned everyone, Kelly. I gave Adam grief constantly. The difference is, they could take it without turning it into some deep psychological analysis of my character. Blake descended the step again, his body language clearly indicating he was leaving. He said, I thought we could have an honest conversation. I thought we were mature enough to disagree without it destroying everything. I was wrong. Kelly's voice cracked. She said, Blake, if you walk out that door right now, we're done. You know that, right? There's no coming back from this. Blake stopped and turned to face her one last time. He said, Kelly, it was already over. We've been done for a long time. We just didn't know it yet. Kelly's face crumpled slightly. She said, I don't believe that. We meant something to each other. I know we did. Blake's voice softened just a fraction. He said, Maybe we did, once. But people grow apart, Kelly. Careers take different paths, and sometimes the people we thought we knew become strangers. That's not anyone's fault. It's just life. Kelly wiped her eyes, her professionalism barely holding together. She said, "So that's your answer? It's just life? Years of friendship? And that's all you've got?" Blake said, "What do you want me to say? That I'll forget everything that was said here today? That's not real, Kelly. And if there's one thing we can both agree on, it's that we're done with fake." Kelly nodded slowly. She said, "You're right. We're done with fake. So I guess we're just done." Blake looked at her for a long moment, and for just a second, something like regret crossed his face. He said, "For what it's worth, I hope your show continues to be successful. I just don't think I can be part of it anymore." Kelly's voice was barely audible. She said, "Yeah, I got that message loud and clear." Blake turned and walked down the steps, his footsteps echoing in the silent studio. No one moved. No one spoke. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every moment of this spectacular collapse of a friendship that millions had believed was genuine. Kelly stood alone on the platform, watching him go. She didn't call after him again. She just watched as Blake Shelton walked off her show and potentially out of her life. As he reached the studio doors, Blake paused with his hand on the handle. For a moment, it seemed like he might turn back, but he didn't. He pushed through the doors and disappeared. Kelly stood frozen for several seconds before finally turning to face the audience. Her face was composed, but her eyes were red. She took a deep breath and said, "Well, that happened. I think we're going to take a break here. That wasn't what any of us signed up for today." She walked to the edge of the stage and said, "Sometimes conversations go places we don't expect. Sometimes we learn things about people we thought we knew, and sometimes things just don't work out. That's the honest truth." She paused, collecting herself. She said, "I want to thank Blake for coming on the show today, even though it didn't end the way any of us hoped. And I want to be clear, I stand by everything I said. I don't apologize for my passion or my commitment to excellence." So what do you think? Was Kelly out of line for pushing Blake so hard? Or was Blake wrong to come on her show with an attitude? Make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling us who you think was in the right here. Was this confrontation inevitable, or could it have been avoided?